Welcome back to another Diablo 4 build guide. In this video, we're going to talk about a couple variations on the Tornado Storm Wolf. The first variation is going to run the Barber Malignant Heart, and then the second is going to be running Earth and Might without the Barber. Now that second version can be ran in the Eternal Realm as well. It's just not going to be as powerful not running the Malignant Hearts. You just swap those out of your jewelry for skulls instead, and it's still viable for T100 Nightmare Dungeons. There will be a link to the D4 planner for both builds in the info section of this video, along with another link to a starter Paragon board for early game, mostly focused on spirit gain. First up, let's take a look at the skills and aspects. Tornado is our damage dealing ability. Tornado will stay out for a duration, can hit multiple enemies, and can even hit the same enemy multiple times. With the skill tree modifiers, there's a 20% chance to spawn an additional Tornado when we cast it, and Tornado has a 10% chance to make enemies vulnerable on hit. Paired with the Storm Chaser's aspect, Tornado will seek enemies out instead of having its normal, unpredictable pathing. When Tornado is cast, it starts its pathing right in front of your character. So generally I play in melee range, dropping tornadoes directly on top of enemies, but the nice thing about Storm Chasers is you have the added benefit of dropping back and casting at range if needed. As we go over these aspects, you're going to see my current gear. Understand that this gear is not optimized. Later on in the video, we're going to go over the exact stats you want on each piece of gear. Accelerating aspect increases attack speed for 5 seconds on critical strikes with core skills. Tornado is a core skill and will be stacking crit chance while also guaranteeing crits at times, depending on which key passive we're running. This buff will be up basically all the time. And of course, we're running everybody's favorite unique, the Tempest Roar. This helmet gives storm skills both the werewolf and shape-shifting tag, so that we can synergize storm, nature magic, werewolf, and shapeshifting through gear, the skill tree, and Paragon. Tempest Roar also provides some spirit generation through lucky hits. Grizzly Rage paired with the Dire Wolf's aspect is what really makes this build function. Grizzly Rage turns your character into a dire werewolf for a duration. While in this form, we gain damage, a stacking damage buff, movement speed, spirit cost reduction, fortify per second, life on kill, and unstoppable for 6 seconds after it's activated. Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast will increase the duration of Grizzly Rage, while also giving us a stacking crit damage buff every time we crit while Grizzly Rage is active. We want to extend the duration of Grizzly Rage and reduce the cooldown as much as possible. Both Calamity and Calm Before the Storm Spirit Boons help out with this. Calamity extends the duration of ultimate skills by 25%, while Calm Before the Storm has a chance on lucky hit to reduce the cooldown of ultimate skills by 2 seconds. For the basic skill, we're going to be running Storm Strike. It's a melee generator, which again is fine because for the most part, we're going to be in or near melee range. Storm Strike reduces damage taken by 15% for 3 seconds after dealing damage with Storm Strike. This damage reduction is the main reason to run it over Wind Shear, but if you feel you don't need the DR, you could swap it out. This paired with Aspect of Might grants 20% damage reduction for up to 6 seconds after using a basic skill. Just a quick note, for Aspect of Might, you don't have to hit anything to get the DR buff. You just have to use the basic skill. So really, you want to be weaving Storm Strikes in with your tornadoes, even if you don't need the spirit to keep these damage reduction sources going. Hurricane is a short-range, damage-dealing ability around your character that stays out for a duration. With the second modifier, enemies affected by Hurricane deal 20% less damage. Hurricane slows enemies and has a lucky hit chance, so it can proc things like Calm Before the Storm. Blood Howl is a defensive ability that heals you for a percentage of your maximum life. With the second modifier, we gain 15% attack speed for 4 seconds on use. With the first modifier, kills reduce the cooldown of Blood Howl by 1 second. With this being off cooldown constantly, it has a great synergy with the Vigilance passive, which gives 15% damage reduction after using a defensive skill. And then finally for the last ability, you have a couple options. You can run Cyclone Armor for passive non-physical damage reduction. You also get an on-use knockback, and Cyclone Armor does deal damage, so it actually has a lucky hit chance as well. If you go this route, I like the Craven aspect for movement speed when moving away from slowed enemies. And in this build, everything is pretty much slowed all the time. Or you can run Debilitating Roar with the aspect of the Dark Howl. This aspect turns Debilitating Roar into a werewolf skill, so you can use it in dire werewolf form. This ability reduces the damage nearby enemies deal by 70% for 4 seconds, and then with modifiers grants Fortify and heals your character. For the key passive, if you're running the non-Barber Earth and Might version, then of course you run Earth and Might. This gives a chance on lucky hit to restore all of our spirit and guarantee crits for 5 seconds. This is paired with Mighty Storm's aspect so that it also applies to storm skills. And then honestly, for the Barber version, you have a ton of options. You can run Perfect Storm, Ursine Strength because the damage modifier portion isn't tied to being in Werebear form, Bestial Rampage for 25% attack speed, or Lupin Ferocity to guarantee some hard-hitting crits. I've tried all of them and they all work just fine, so play around with them and figure out what you like. I'm going to recommend Perfect Storm in the D4 planner just because it's the most user-friendly and gives you a ton of spirit gain early on. And since we don't need Mighty Storm's aspect here, we have some options for another offensive aspect. You can run Edge Masters for more damage based on available resource, Night Howler's aspect for increased crit chance after activating Blood Howl. Wrapping up the aspects, Aspect of Disobedience provides a stacking armor buff as long as you're dealing damage. With how many times Tornado can hit, this stacks up quickly and is easy to keep maxed out. Aspect of Retaliation gives your core skills increased damage based on your Fortify amount. I've seen a lot of people talking about having spirit issues lately, so let's quickly talk about that. First, like I said in the video description, there's a link to a starter Paragon board focused on mostly spirit gain. You're going to want a high-rolled Direwolf's aspect on your amulet. This is very important for spirit cost reduction. Lust for Carnage grants 2 spirit on critical strike. So in that early Paragon board, we take this as the first board we attach. You can also get up to 4 spirit on kill from the Ancestral Guidance board. And then, like I said, I'm going to recommend Perfect Storm for now as your key passive if you feel that you need the extra spirit generation. Next up, let's take a look at the ideal stats for each piece of gear. Now for the helmet, we're running the Tempest Roar, so those stats are always going to be the same. For the chest piece, you're looking for 3 DR stats or armor and maximum life. For the gloves, you're looking for plus ranks to Tornado, lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, and attack speed. For the pants, again, you're looking for 3 damage reduction rolls or armor and then maximum life. For the boots, movement speed, damage reduction while injured, total armor while in werewolf form, and then I like movement speed for 4 seconds after killing an elite, but you could easily make this willpower or all stats if you wanted to. For the amulet, we're going cooldown reduction, ranks to envenom, movement speed, and then total armor while in werewolf form. One of these 2 could potentially be damage reduction while injured. For the rings, you want vulnerable damage, lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, and maximum life. For the weapon, the 2 most important are vulnerable damage and willpower. I've got core skill damage and all stats here. You could also go for damage against close enemies, something along those lines if you wanted to. For the offhand, cooldown reduction, lucky hit chance, damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, and then critical strike chance. Next up, let's take a look at the passive tree. Now we're just going to talk about the actual passives themselves since we've already pretty much gone over all of the abilities. So we're putting 1 point into Heart of the Wild, mainly just to get 2 wild impulses. This is going to increase the damage of Tornado while also increasing the spirit cost. Putting 3 points into Predatory Instinct to get 6% increased critical strike chance against close enemies. 3 points here for the movement speed. We've got 1 point in Ancestral Fortitude just to get to Vigilance, again for this damage reduction after using a defensive skill. Completely skipping the Companion Cluster. Down here, we're grabbing 1 point in Neurotoxin, poisoned enemies are slowed, and then 1 point in Toxic Claws. Critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 8% of their base damage as poisoning damage, so we're poisoning with Tornado, with Hurricane, with Storm Strike, and then those poisoned enemies are slowed. Then we're also getting increased critical strike damage against poisoned enemies. Down here, we've got 3 points in Defiance, increased damage against elites. We've got 3 points in Circle of Life to get more healing. And then I currently have 2 points in Resonance. It's just 4% increased damage. You don't get the rest of this benefit. This could go somewhere else if you wanted it to. It's kind of just like filler points. We've also got 3 points in Defensive Posture. This increases the amount of Fortify you gain from all sources. 3 points in Nature's Resolve. 15% chance when struck to Fortify for 4% of your base life. And we're actually running 3 points in Unrestrained. Reduce the duration of control impairing effects by 9%. This is tripled if you have Fortify over 50% of your maximum life. So we're running this now because, again, before the nerfs, we were unstoppable for the entirety of Grizzly Rage. Now we aren't. So I think this feels pretty good to run. You don't necessarily have to, but I would recommend it. And then again, for key passives, kind of just whatever you decide you like. So for the Paragon board, I'm going to show it to you on the D4 planner just because I'm only level 94, so I don't have a full Paragon board set up in-game. So for the first board, we're running Territorial. Early on, you can run Exploit here if need be, if you don't have a ton of glyph sockets yet. The second board is going to be Inner Beast with Werewolf here. We get some attack speed, and then Inner Beast is a really nice board for defense. You get a good bit of armor through here, some more armor here, max life, things like that. Now, in my starter board, I've got Lust for Carnage here, so you can get the Lust for Carnage node to gain spirit when you crit with werewolf skills. This is more of a end-game respec that you would do here. So then the next board can either be Thunderstruck up top here, or you can go over to Heightened Malice. So with Thunderstruck, we go up and grab Thunderstruck along with some vulnerable damage in this cluster here. And then we're going to path back up into Thunderstruck later. So we go over to Heightened Malice. We get another glyph. This is going to be Fang and Claw here. We're going to get increased damage to close enemies, and it's also going to buff the magic nodes within range. The most notable ones being the damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned. So at this point, you have the option of either pathing down to Heightened Malice and Ancestral Guidance down here, or going up to Lust for Carnage. I'd probably recommend pathing up to Lust for Carnage next. So you path up through here and get your Exploit glyph here, and then up to Lust for Carnage. Before you go back into Thunderstruck, I would then path down. Through here, you get some damage to elites and damage to poisoned enemies. Then you can grab Heightened Malice, and you can come down here and grab Ancestral Guidance, along with a little bit of Spirit on Kill. Then you can go back up and path through here to get some more attack speed, and then finally get your last glyph, which is going to be Earth and Sky, which gives you increased damage to your nature magic skills if an enemy is crowd controlled or vulnerable. But again, the big thing here is increasing the bonus to all magic nodes, and the ones we're really looking at are the damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. For your gems, for armor, I like maximum life gems. So I put these in the helmet, chest piece, and pants. For your weapons, go with emeralds to get increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. For your malignant hearts, you're going to be running the heart that pulls enemies in while you have an ultimate skill active. In my opinion, as powerful as the Barber is, this is my favorite Druid heart for this season, so you definitely want to run that. You're also going to be running this Brutal Heart in both the Earth and Might version and the Barber version. This gives you basically up to 20% damage reduction. The secondary part of it's not that big of a deal, but the damage reduction is super nice. Of course, you're going to run the Barber Heart, so critical strikes and all subsequent damage within a duration from 2 to 4 seconds is absorbed by your target. Then the absorbed damage erupts onto surrounding enemies, and then it's multiplied for each second that it was stored. And then if you're running the Earth and Might version, for my third Malignant Heart, I really like the Calculated. After spending 150 to 200 of your primary resource, your next attack stuns enemies hit. I believe this can go up to 4 or 5 seconds, and it's very, very strong, especially with how much attack speed you get with Tornado, and even with all the spirit reduction, you are spending spirit very quickly. For Spirit Boons, in Deer, we're running Wariness, 10% reduced damage from elites. You see this in basically every build. Alternatively, you could potentially run Advantageous Beast. It reduces the duration of control impairing effects by 15%. I haven't really messed around with that too much, but it could be an option. In Eagle, I'm currently running Maximum Life. You could easily run Crit Chance, Attack Speed, or Crit Damage here if you wanted to. In Wolf, we're running Calamity, like we've already talked about, extend the duration of ultimate skills. And then we have 2 boons with Snake. So we're running Masochistic. This isn't anywhere near as good as it used to be, but I still think the healing is definitely worth taking. And then Calm Before the Storm, like we've already talked about, to potentially reduce the duration of Grizzly Rage when we lucky hit. So I think that's going to about wrap it up, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.